Okay, here they're talking about the looming crisis. The crisis was actually brought on by FDR. We had to go in FDR's eyes and in the eyes of Winston Churchill. The U.S. had to get in the war. And here we go, the nation unprepared for war. And this Uncle Sam balloon that was in Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade in 1941 was chopped up and used for rubber because it was all rubber for the war effort. So sanctions were put in place by the U.S. basically to get Japan to strike us. A little known fact, I'm fixing to show you the midget submarine from Pearl Harbor that was blown up and sunk in the harbor, and then they brought it here to the War Museum of the Pacific in Fredericksburg. Something to keep in mind, Roosevelt's secretary signed in to the White House the day before Pearl Harbor happened, and she didn't sign in the day that Pearl Harbor happened or the day after Pearl Harbor happened. The Sunday. She signed in Saturday. She didn't sign in Sunday or Monday. When Roosevelt gave the speech, the day that will live in infamy, it was actually written because her name was on the bottom. She took the dictation for it. And then he read it off, obviously on the radio. But she signed it that she took the dictation. Well, she took the dictation the day before, so he already knew the Japanese were fixing to attack Pearl Harbor. They clumped all the planes together. Now, all the carriers, which were the important things, were out in the looking supposedly for the Japanese. The seminal work on this was done by a man named Gary Victor, and he tried to dispel. He went into trying to dispel that Roosevelt didn't know anything about, that we didn't knowingly get into Pearl Harbor, and he became the biggest proponent for it. So this is going to be I'm going to show you the there's going to be a little thing goes on for a few minutes about this. But anyway, all the ships in Pearl Harbor, except for 3, were refloated. Remember, if there would have been like an hour warning that Pearl Harbor was going to happen, they could have put out to sea. Now, what would have happened? They still would have lost because they were unprepared. And the people would be in 5,000 feet of water instead of 50 feet of water. Here, when the ships blew up in the harbor, or they got bombed, they just had to jump off the side of the ship and swim, in most cases, 100 feet to shore. And if you're going to get beat up in an emergency room, which was essentially what Pearl Harbor was. So they refloated all but 3 of the ships, obviously the Arizona and 2 others. They refloated them, and most of them were engaged by the barrage of Okinawa. And so they've done studies on this in the History Channel, and Discovery have talked about if they would have had an hour warning, how different it would have been, and it would have been much costlier life. They would have lost 3 times as much. So here's the midget submarine. And none of the midget submarines had any effect on the Pearl Harbor that happened at this date. So here's the midget submarine. It was loaded with 2 torpedoes. They were already affixed. Here they are. And if you come here, and this cable was to lift anti-submarines nets that were in Pearl Harbor. If you come here to the War Museum of the Pacific, they don't really tell you this, but on the other side of this wall, there's a walkway that goes to the gift shop and some other exhibits. And there's the hole where the depth charge blew a hole in it. And they've restored it. They've used that hole and enlarged it so you can see what the inside, the cramped quarters, it looked like. And here's one of the ships this is the ship that sunk this one, the USS Ward. And you can see these were actually torpedo tubes here. So much like a PT boat, a surface ship can have torpedo tubes, and they just fire the torpedo off the side. and they had depth charges. These were the depth charges that actually got it. So they just dropped these depth charges off the end. But anyway, that's the thing that actually got this one was the USS Ward, and the depth charge struck it on the other side, and you can see the hole here. Like they don't ever point it out, but that's where it is. So if you come here, check it out, and be sure when you go over to the gift store that you look in and you'll see it there. So anyway, about the coolest thing you can see here is this midget submarine, and here it is. Thank you.